I think the biggest thing that I learned through this, out of all of the automotive stuff, is mentally being okay with being in chaos and saying, like, if things go wrong, it's a temporary, let's figure out how to fix it and let's figure out how to get forward. Because if I didn't and I just sat on it, I don't think I would have made it through this. I don't think I would have finished this thing, to be honest. This is my 2012 Porsche Cayman.
Where to begin?
Where to begin, yeah.
So what was your vision like, just even taking this on?
Inspiration for the build. So I started getting into cars pretty late. So the whole story for me of the automotive thing is kind of how I even got to here. So I started off with like a 98 Mustang GT, right? Nice. Long story short, the car was always broken, constantly, and I wasn't really a car person at the time. I mean, I liked cars. I liked to look at them and thought they were cool, but working on them, nobody in my family had done that, right? So for me, this was a huge thing where my car was constantly broken. I was a young kid. I didn't have money to fix it, so either I needed to learn how to fix it or I didn't have a car.
Totally.
With that being in mind, I went through this entire car, fixed it up, finally got it to work properly, and by the time when I was 21, I was kind of outgrew this Mustang thing. I was like, let me move on to something else, and I got into Genesis Coupe, and that's why I really dove into the whole car thing. I decided to wide body it, do a big turbo kit, and I went through so many phases with this car that was just insane, and I learned a lot. And actually my whole goal was I wanted to get to SEMA. I'd seen people build cars for SEMA. I've seen TV shows about people doing it, right? And I've had other people that I was close to build cars for it, and I could never get in. I could never get somebody to have me booth. I could never even get invited to go. So I was with this next car that I built, because I felt like the Genesis kind of reached a plateau of either it turns into a full-on race car, or it's this is where it's at, And so I was like, I'm gonna get a car that I can build and get a little skin in the game, earn some respect, go to SEMA and do this. And so I literally bought this car with the intention to build it to get to SEMA, which is the entire purpose of me doing that. And so when I bought this car, it was in early 2020. Obviously, as the year went on, a lot of parts and things for cars in general became very difficult to come by. So I had made these renderings that took 3 months for me and one of my buddies to make. And I had this crazy rendering that I published of the car and what it was set to be. And then it became part gathering and trying to collect parts and everything like that. So for about a year and a half, I was just trying to get parts, get things that I wanted to do, and that's kind of where I landed with this kit. I initially got a Rocket Money V2 kit for this car, and based off my rendering, I was going to cut it and change it to be what I wanted, but it was a foundation and a starting point. I also had rendered this crazy wing that we have on the back. It's not specifically this, but I had a 911 GT2 old whale tail wing with the big RWB kind of style wing.
Yeah, right? It is very, very RWB.
Yeah, and so I was heavily inspired by the RWB, Nakai, the whole thing to even get the Porsche. That's why I even picked this car, because I was like, okay, I can build something similar to that on a much smaller budget, Yeah. And so I had that wing rendered out, and it was awesome. I ended up having this company, I think it's called Air. It's American International Racing, and they produced a fiberglass replica of the GT2 wing for me. And it wasn't gonna fit this. It was just an actual fiberglass replica one, and I was gonna cut it and mold it to this. And this company, Karma, the owner was like, hey, your renderings and what you're doing looks almost identical to what we are building and trying to produce a kit. So they reached out saying like, can we work together? Can we do something? And so we ended up coming together and deciding that I was gonna run with them and then do this kit specifically. So I did that. We decided to sign the deal and say that we were gonna bring this kit to life and bring it out here to the United States in September of 2020. And then I got this thing, I think I got the kit in hand in August of 2021.
Wow.
So it was a very
long time to wait.
Very long waiting period. And then when we got it, obviously, as it was like a first production mold or anything like that, I think these cars had Euro bumpers, and the car that they made the molds off of had a different mounting position for all the bumpers. So unfortunately, none of this fit, and I had to cut it and redo it by hand. Yeah.
Dude, huge props to you for not backing down when it didn't fit, and just saying, okay, it's gonna happen.
Yeah,
it's gonna happen. We got to do it, and then you go for it. Like,
I was dedicated to the process because I wanted this car, like I said, to go to SEMA so badly. So this being a brand new kit that nobody else has and still is one of one in the United States. There's not another kit out here. There's only one other car with this, which is their prototype car that they're basing stuff off of, and that car's in Indonesia. So technically, there's only 2 of these in existence.
That's so cool. It gave me chills, like when just hearing you talk about that, where it's like, you set this goal, and then you friggin' made it come to fruition. You forced it into fruition.
For sure. Like, it's crazy. I hate like hearing that, but that's one of the biggest things. Recently, I started going a little bit more viral on the Instagram thing, and I hear it all the time where people are like, "Oh, you came out of nowhere." It's like, dude, I've been doing the social media thing for 7 years. This car I've been building, like I bought it with the intention to do this, and so for 3 years it was planned, and I did things specifically, and it's just now coming together, and people are finally. Recognizing that, which is very cool.
This is an amazing build. This absolutely deserves all the recognition it's getting, man. This is so cool.
I appreciate that, dude, because what I'm really here to do is just to inspire other people and say that you can do the same thing. If you believe in what it is, if you're passionate about the automotive community or anything else, and you really, really chase it, like you won't fail. I mean, you will run into things that will set you back and whatever, but if you're passionate and you keep pushing forward, being super persistent, like there's no way that you won't achieve what you want. Like, this was built, I started off in my parents' driveway, brought it all the way out here to Huntington Beach, and was borrowing my buddy's driveway to build this because where I live at in Costa Mesa, unfortunately, they're not very fond of like any automotive work whatsoever. So I needed to find a way. So I was doing this in borrowed driveways.
Dude, that's so
literally
cool.
Every single day after work, grinding, and I would have people from the community be like, I can't believe you cut up a perfectly good working Porsche, and people would, they could not see the vision, and I got a lot of ridicule for that, which is very crazy, and I'm stoked to see the like kind of 180 flip of people. Like, I'm not salty about it. I'm kind of like stoked about it because I expected to get a lot of ridicule for it, but I really haven't since it's been done. In the process of cutting it, yes, absolutely.
Of course, yes. They can't see the final vision. Dude, that's amazing, man. It's such a cool testament to just like you can do anything, like
absolutely.
You grinded through it with your Mustang and with the G, and you learned, and you got your hands dirty. You learned how to do it, and then look at this. This is a SEMA car. And you just did that in driveways.
That's amazing. So all the carbon that you see on the car, I hand laid.
Really?
Yeah, hand laid in so the roof, I did it in 4 days inside that garage because of time crunch. The wing, that was one of the first pieces that we were laying. I actually did the steering wheel first. I hand laid the steering wheel first, and then I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do the rest of the aero pieces because I think it'll be nice. And then we did the wing, and we had problems with the wing. And so I ended up clearing out my spare bedroom in my apartment and turned it into this carbon room. And I literally have videos of like tarps all over the ground, me in like clean suits, trying not to make a mess of the carbon and doing it inside the spare room, literally trying to have everything temperature controlled because we had issues before where it's like in the garage or outside and it's not curing properly or parts are curing faster than the other one. So I was like, I need a space and this is what I have. So I'm gonna do this.
That's so crazy, dude.
It was insane, dude. I would literally, I kid you not, for months and months and months, I slept maybe 3 or 4 hours every day, going to bed at 3 a.m. and then getting up at 6 for work.
That's so inspiring. Okay, so let's get into some specs.
Okay.
This fitment industry, so we got to hear about the wheels.
You guys got to talk about the wheels. Okay, so the wheels is one of the craziest parts because I did import these from Japan. They're SSR SP1s, and I was very much so, like I said before, inspired by the RWB thing, and they run works and they run SSRs.
Yep.
And in true SSR fashion, I wanted to get these set of wheels, and honestly, it wasn't like, oh, I needed to import ones from Japan. I couldn't find wheels in my bolt pattern, and I was going to have to get some made. And then there's one day I was browsing, I think I found them like on an Up Garage, and they had these in the exact bolt pattern for the Cayman, so I wouldn't need to like get them re-drilled or anything. I was like, I'm getting these.
That's
I imported
awesome.
these here, and I blew them apart and rebuilt them. Like I said, it was the 2020 thing, man. So these wheels sat on a container for 7 months. I finally got them, and then when we blew them apart, we then sat another 9 months waiting for just to try and get parts to rebuild them, which was insane.
Yeah, and against all odds, this thing came together. The worst
I literally
time.
did every single thing that I could and bent over backwards just to try to do what I can to build this thing. I did this with zero support. I reached out to a lot of people for like branding to like do whatever, and there's a lot of opportunities that presented itself, but people wanted me to change what I was doing, and I was like, I have a very specific vision, and if you don't want to support this, I'll figure out how to do it. And so like I tried to work whatever I could do to like get extra money to just buy the parts that I needed to make whatever it is happen.
Dude, that's so cool, man. So cool. I really, really respect that you stayed true. Yeah. Because I really don't think that a lot of people would do that. I think especially if you're funding all this yourself and your back's up against the wall, you don't know if something's going to happen. Maybe I'll tweak this, maybe I'll tweak that. But you stayed true, and it's clearly, I mean, I can't imagine this being any better. Dude, I mean, this is amazing.
I appreciate that, because like that's the perfect, I guess, testament to that. Is like my back was against the wall the entire time. I didn't know if I was going to be able to get this done. Didn't know if I was going to make it in time. I didn't know if I was going to even get to SEMA. I literally had to build the entire thing and prove that I could do it, because I wasn't like, I didn't have the history of doing all this, so I had to really show, like, hey, I'm here and I want to continue to try and do this.
Have you ever thought about like this is like what you want to do like forever kind of thing, and you do?
This is the goal. So the goal is for me to honestly, it's my brain starting to. Right on. I started my own company called Race Supply, and that's the idea, is to try and offer like my services, build cars, make parts. So through this, I did a lot of learning too. I started building parts in Fusion 360. I started 3D printing parts and everything. Like even the license plate mount is integrated into a bash bar that I had made in Fusion 360, and then we fabricated and brought it to life. Yeah, dude. That's what I'm trying to offer.
Yes, dude, it's amazing. And then another thing, so I really, really like that you did this with the Cayman.
Yeah.
It's because I feel like 911 is like the play, like usually, right? And I wondered what your process was.
It's funny, for me, I was going to get an older 911, and I was looking at a bunch of 911s, and I wasn't set on the Cayman, actually. I'm always set on a manual car. Honestly, it's like bread and butter for me. The reason I wanted to get a 2020 Supra when they were coming out, but they announced they weren't coming out in a manual, so I was like kind of heartbroken. I was like, dang, I'm not gonna get it. I'm literally that petty about the manual car thing, whereas I won't get it if it won't. And so I was looking at older 911s, actually. I wanted a black interior and a 6-speed manual. And lo and behold, it's like not easy to find a freaking 6-speed manual Porsche anywhere. And I was looking all over California, and it's funny, my girlfriend at the time, she was like, why don't you just look somewhere else other than California? I was like, you're right. So I ended up finding this car in Texas, and it had 18,000 miles with a 6-speed manual transmission. It was too good of a deal for me to pass up, and I was like, looks like I'm building a Cayman.
Yeah, right on. Okay. Yeah. Because you don't see a lot of Caymans in this style. It's always 911.
No. This is a 987.2, because it's 2012, so they had a 987.1, which looked very similar, except there's few subtle differences, and that's like taillights and headlights, and unfortunately, what that meant is the .2 had way less parts available. .1 has a bunch of parts, bunch of different headlights or anything. So that's why, like, even the headlights that I have right now are the stock headlights that I modified to do that. So I was one of the only people. It's funny, I wrote on, I think it's called Planet 9 forum. I was the first person to cut these headlights open and then retain, they have the dynamic headlights. I was able to retain the dynamic headlight movements and aiming by itself, even with the halos and the integrated lights. Yeah, I was even able to do all of this stuff and retain the factory harness and just have it be a plug and play.
No way, dude. That's amazing. You're doing like full R&D that like companies would do for an aftermarket product. I mean, and just doing it yourself.
Dedicated. I told you, I had an idea, and I was like, okay, what is it going to take for me to make this? Yeah. I'm going to have to either learn a new skill, or I'm going to have to, find somebody who can do it, and ended up being me most of the time.
I gotta say, man, your mindset is so rock solid, and it's so cool to hear.
It was not that way. It was not that way.
Not a lot of people have that resiliency nowadays. You know, it's rare, and it's something really cool.
The thing is, like, it may sound now because I'm done and I'm like I've been through it, but trust me, the whole thing was an emotional roller coaster, especially mentally. And there are times where I was sitting there like, I don't know if I'm good enough to do this, 2, if I can. And a lot of times it's like, you can look back at it when it's done and say, yeah, but it worked out. But when you're sitting there with parts in your hand and you're like, I have a lot of money in this and I don't know if I can do it. And you're sitting here like scratching your head saying like, I don't know who can help me. I don't know if I'm gonna make this. I don't know if all of this is gonna be worth it. And it really sits, like sometimes you get discouraged and you wanna stop. And that's when it's like, you really have to, if you want it bad, you have to power through those things and figure out how you can be confident. I think the biggest thing that I learned through this, out of all of the automotive stuff, is literally just like mentally being okay with being in chaos and saying like, if things go wrong, like not to hyper focus on the thing that's going wrong and saying, okay, it's a temporary, let's figure out how to fix it and let's figure out how to get forward. Because if I didn't and I just sat on it, I don't think I would have made it through this. I don't think I would have finished this thing, to be honest. So like the mindset, if it sounds super confident, I promise you during the whole thing, it wasn't.
I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Because like I said, in the process of doing this, I didn't have supportive people like saying, oh, it's going to work out. I had a lot of people telling me I was stupid.
See, that's tough, and that's just so much respect to you, man. So much respect to you that you said, screw that, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Was it just the vision of the final product that would get you through those hard and very intense
because I figured it was like, this is my time to do this. I figured like I've been doing the social media thing for the last 7 years, trying to build my YouTube, trying to build cars, and I want to do this really badly. And I think that this is the time to do it. This was the car to do it. This was my opportunity. And if I didn't do it now, I would sit there wondering, well, what if I did? So I had to do it.
You dared to dream, and look at this, dude.
Yeah, and it's cool. It's cool.
Incredible. It's incredible.
Still haven't made it to the end of the road, you know? I'm still doing stuff in garages, trying to figure it out and figure out how to make this like into a business so I can, do this for a living, but we're on our way,
That's
figuring
so
it out.
cool. Dude, let me shake your hand. Dude, you're